So I'm just doing a couple of videos exposing Formula One's own Twitter feed and how it is informing the world about Formula One and the dangerous nature in the way that it is conditioning people to perceive the greatness of a particular competitor. The last video I've taken you through the start, Max Verstappen's start, how they described that as being extraordinary, and it was nothing more than ordinary really. But that was in my last video. We're going to, this video, scroll up a little bit and maybe have a look at the two Alpine lads that look like a pair of happy hamsters here, finishing second and third in the race. Here they are, they're happy hamsters. But before we start getting into that, what we need to do is apply context. So the context is this isn't a one-off event. We can set this Grand Prix into the season of the sport. What have we witnessed all season, and how does this event relate to what we've already seen this season? Well, what we've seen this season is a World Championship dominated by Max Verstappen, who has held the lead from the first race of the season and maintained it all the way through. He's achieved 8 victories in that Red Bull machine. Hasn't achieved a victory for the last 10 races since certain things were clarified in the rules that you're not allowed to have on your car, and hadn't won since then. Strange that, isn't it? Rather than disqualify competitors for perhaps having devices on their car which were illegal, they've had to clarify that you're not allowed them and allow you to keep all the results that you may have been using a device like that, rather than disqualify you from those races where you were using devices like that. So, the other drivers in this year's championship that have had consistently decent enough seasons to be near the top of the championship. Lando Norris in the McLaren competitive car, 331 points. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, sometimes been competitive, 307 points. Oscar Piastri, second McLaren, 262. Carlos Sainz Jr., 244. So what we see is of the top 5 slots, 2 of them are from the McLaren team, 2 of them are from the Ferrari team. We've got a standalone Red Bull. Is that because Max Verstappen's teammate is not very good? Or is that because Max Verstappen's teammate doesn't have equal machinery? Do the drivers in the other 2 teams, McLaren and Ferrari, have relatively equal machinery? What we now see is then the 2 Mercedes drivers of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's the one with 2 victories to George's 1, and there's a difference of just 2 points between the 2 drivers. It's evident that George Russell is getting preferential treatment. This is a dynamic that's been highlighted by Lewis Hamilton for well over half of the season. Active sabotage by Mercedes to try to ensure that George Russell finish higher in the championship than Lewis Hamilton. To the self-sabotage, they would rather the team didn't get its optimum results, providing George finished ahead of Lewis. That is the nature of those. So we come down. 8th position in the championship. We finally get the other Red Bull car. So the first Red Bull car and the second Red Bull car are separated by 6 cars in that championship. Something's not right there. So I would suggest if it was an equivalent machine, then that differential should not be there. We then get Fernando Alonso in an Aston Martin. 9th position, 62 points. Nico Hülkenberg in a Haas. 10th. Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull B team. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. So this is the first emergence of the Alpine cars. 12th position in the championship. Then we get Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. This is the standings after Brazil. Prior to Brazil, Pierre Gasly had 15 points less. There was also the sprint race where I think Gasly picked up 2 points as well. So I think he got 17 points less. So you take away that 17 points from that 26. Gasly was on 9 points in the championship. Bear in mind that Tsunoda finished behind Gasly, so he didn't pick up. Gasly picked up more points than these cars around him. Okay, other than Esteban Ocon, Gasly's picked up more points than everybody else, so he would have been below these cars around him. Gasly would have been down on 9 points, I believe, prior to the Brazilian event, both the sprint and the Grand Prix. Lance Stroll didn't take part in the Grand Prix, so he would have been on the same amount of points. Hulkenberg, either him or K-Mag didn't even, well, they got retired from the Grand Prix. One didn't contest, the other one retired from the Grand Prix. Ocon achieved 18 points. So prior to finishing second in the Grand Prix at Brazil, he'd have only been on 5. So with Gasly on 9 and Ocon on 5, that would have put them down here. 9 and 5 points respectively puts these lads at 18th, 19th, 20th in the table. In the same region as Oliver Bearman, who's contested 3 Grand Prix, Franco Colapinto, who's contested 4 Grand Prix, something like that. Liam Lawson, who was awful for, in fact, sorry, I've got the wrong guy. I was thinking Logan Sargent. Liam Lawson, who is new, okay, just been drafted in to replace Daniel Ricciardo, actually doing extremely well. I apologise for saying he was awful. I was wrong. He's doing well in the Red Bull B team, but has got 4 points, and well done to him. But that's because he's only contested a couple of Grand Prix. Zhou Guan Yu in that terrible car, and Bottas in the terrible car, Logan Sargent. So what we're seeing is Ocon and Gasly. Ocon would have been on 5 points. Gasly would have been on 9 points. Where does that put them in that championship? Right down the bottom. And yet those guys finished second and third in a Grand Prix. Is that a remarkable achievement? Yes, it is. Now again, over the course of that weekend, 18 points for second, 15 points for third, and I believe Gasly got 7th, which would have netted him 2 points in the sprint race. What does that mean? Well, essentially it's 35 points to the Alpine team. What does that do to the Constructors? You take away 35 points from what is now their total of 49. You take away 35 points from this, and that puts them on 14 points. Where does that put them? Below the Williams. Because Williams didn't pick up any points. Below Williams, 9th position in the table. One race earns, or one event, when you include the 2 points for the sprint race, has earned the Alpine team 35 points, elevating them from 9th in that championship up to 6th. What we are told is an increase in prize money of $50,000, right? Or somewhere in that region. We hear the narrative. Oh, they had nothing to lose. Oh, no, but a lot to gain. $50,000 is a lot to gain. You go and speak to Rory McIlroy and Trent Alexander-Arnold, lads who have supposedly injected money into the Alpine team as an investment. Oh, I think they'd be quite pleased that Alpine now stand to gain about 50 million, that they'll get a bit of a share of. Oh, as investors in that team. Yes, they had lots to gain, didn't they? So, was that a masterclass from Alpine, or did Alpine benefit from the circumstances that were that they didn't lose at least 20 seconds of their race time by the time when they would have normally had to have pit in that race? They were able to do that free of charge when the other cars around them who did pit, essentially getting out of their way, they were able to gain those places on the track and then not lose those places when they would have normally had to pit themselves. A massive gain due to the set of circumstances that unfolded that they took advantage of. And fair dues. But would you describe that as being a masterclass by both Ocon and Gasly. Would you describe that as being a masterclass by the Alpine team? I wouldn't. Gasly started in 13th position and made 10 places in that race. Would you describe that as a masterclass by Gasly? I wouldn't. The reality is, one of those cars wasn't there. In fact, two of those cars, both Stroll, I think, let me just double check again, and I want to make sure I'm getting the information right. Albon was definitely ahead of Gasly. Was Stroll? Yes, Stroll was in 10th place, and Alex Albon was in 7th place. They didn't even start the race. So Pierre Gasly, although 13th on the grid, was actually starting as the 11th car and moved up to 3rd place, having benefited from not losing over 20 seconds of race time due to the necessity to have to pit and change tyres. He was able to do that free of charge when the cars ahead of him all went into the pits, pitted, and lost time as a result of it. That's not a masterclass. That's not a masterclass. That is benefiting from circumstance. So let's have a listen to what the happy hamsters have to say.
Hey guys, what a tremendous job you did today.
You remember in MV0 when we were driving on the rain?
Yeah. Yeah, even on the snow. We've been driving on the snow, on the rain.
Was it like that today?
Yes,
Pretty much. Yeah.
Just like driving on the snow. Not really, lads.
Same as it was back in the days when we were the only one showing up at the track under the rain, freezing cold.
Exactly.
But it's all worth it.
It paid off today, and I tell you, when we did that formation, in the in-lap,
We had a lovely time.
I think that's the first thing that came to my mind, What a beautiful story that is.
Yeah.
Still young kids, eh?
I've been saying it was like, this is a moment of a lifetime, It's like, as a kids, from where we came from to end up as teammates was against all odds, but to end up on the same podium.
That's more against all odds.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's against all odds. Why would that be against all odds? Well, you are the team that was 9th in that Constructors' Championship. One of you had gained just 5 points all year. This is the, 21st race out of 24? 21st race. And in the previous 20 races, one of you had just gained 5 points out of 20 opportunities to gain points, and the other had gained just 9 points out of 20 opportunities to gain points. What does that show? Does that show that you're in a competitive car? Does that show that you have tremendous skill as a driver? Shows neither, does it? What's different with this situation? Let's find the reasons behind how these two lads managed to find a place on the podium at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Because there's always a reason. Was it a masterclass of drives exhibited by these two drivers? Was it the performance of the Alpine car? Or were they massive beneficiaries of circumstance?
On a season like this year, because no one would have been able to put a podium, but both cars on it, and in the way we did it is just incredible.
Yeah, what are the odds of that? However, obviously the odds of Alpine doing something like that are highly unlikely, isn't it? What are the odds of Max Verstappen in that Red Bull? Because obviously Red Bull are 3rd in the championship due to the performance of Sergio Perez. But look at Max Verstappen's track record in his Red Bull, the one that hasn't performed for the last 10 races since they've clarified the rules and regulations. But he's got 8 wins all season. Was that out of the ordinary that Max was contesting for a victory in a Grand Prix? Was it out of the ordinary that Max had come from a low grid position to blitz past other drivers? It's not out of the ordinary, is it? We've seen it plenty of times, and we've seen it where he's actually overtaken cars that are the top running teams on the track. Max didn't have to do that this race. What's remarkable about it? What's remarkable? I'm struggling to see What was remarkable about the Brazilian Grand Prix? Was it remarkable in terms of the drives put in by Ocon and Gasly, or did they benefit from circumstance? If they were just doing it a remarkable drive in Brazil, where have they been all season? What's that Alpine car been doing with itself all season? If this is race 3 of a triple header over in America, we're told, oh, the teams they ship their cars out to the Americas. So you've got America, Mexico, Brazil, and they ship them out there and then transport them from race to race. And now the next chance of an upgrade will be for the next set of 3 races. So where has this extra performance come from the Alpine car? Is it the driver's performance? Is it the performance of the car? Or is it the product of circumstances? Always look for a reason. Always be able to understand the why. So I'm trying to keep these videos short for me. But I'm going to go through the next one on Formula One's Twitter feed and the social media little clips that Formula One wants to put out to try to direct people's minds to believe the situation to be a certain way. They're not giving context. Instead, what they're doing, they're trying to boost somebody's image, boost our perception of somebody. They want us to perceive somebody as having greatness and supreme talent when actually it's the how the circumstances have conspired for a particular thing to happen. We are being presented with somebody as being a great because they're putting him on a pedestal as a great. They've done this since 2021, and I'm going to make a video showing you that at the start of the 2021 season, at the first race of the 2021 season, when Lewis Hamilton was tied with Michael Schumacher as a 7-time world champion, and Max Verstappen had never won a world championship, still hasn't won a valid one, but at that stage had won approximately, and I need to double check this, but I believe it was about 7 or 8 Grand Prix in his entire career. Lewis Hamilton had achieved in excess of 90 Grand Prix victories at that stage, I believe. They described Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton as being 2 of the greatest Formula One drivers ever. They made the comparison between drivers with the records that they had at that stage. Why is this sport boosting one competitor and trying to put them up on a pedestal and try and get the world to believe that the man of their accomplishments represents greatness? What is going on? What is going on? They're removing context. They're skewing people's minds. It's a complete narrative. And it's being done by the entire media trying to get the public to perceive somebody in a particular manner. Why? So the next one's to come, and we'll just analyse one of their next fluff articles in the boosting of Max Verstappen. Thanks for your time.